Hi there, Eric from Quarterband Guitar Studio, here to talk to you about how to improve in the practice room. So what we're going to talk about today is how to stay focused on the right things at the right time and in the right order. Because if you do the right things at the wrong time, it's still wrong. If you do too much too fast, you could be learning mistakes. And I think what we all want to do is sound better, faster, right? So we all want to make the most progress in the shortest amount of time. So what I'm going to show you is a pretty powerful system and a way of thinking so that you can stay structured and on target. So let's do it. What we're talking about here is the pyramid of musicianship. And these are the three main things that I believe you should be focusing on when you're trying to get better at any instrument, whether it's guitar, ukulele, kazoo, anything that you're trying to work on should be looked at through one of these three lenses. Ultimately, it comes down to your head, and that's how am I thinking about things and how am I visualizing my instrument. Then two, my hands, do I have the facility to operate this machine? And then three, do I know what this is supposed to sound like? And does it sound like the thing I want in my head when it comes out of my instrument? As we're learning songs on the guitar, it's always a good idea to begin in the bottom right corner with visualizing. Do I understand what's happening? If I'm looking at tab, do I understand what I'm looking at on the fretboard? Do these numbers make sense? If you can see shapes, scale shapes, chord shapes, that makes life a heck of a lot easier. Now, shapes aren't the end all be all of guitar playing, but they certainly do make things a heck of a lot easier for us. So can you understand that if I see 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8 across all 6 strings on the guitar, that this is an A minor pentatonic scale? If you have a little bit of working knowledge of music theory and how our instrument is laid out, it does make memorizing so much easier, so that we're freed up then to start working on some higher order tasks. But ultimately, if you don't have the piece memorized or don't have some chunk of it deeply understood mentally, it will be very difficult for your song to ever progress out of a beginner sounding kind of stage. If you notice that your music sounds choppy, that it just doesn't sound right, even though you're pretty sure you're hitting all the right numbers, all the right strings at all the right times, the issue ultimately is that you are reciting something from memory as opposed to just letting the idea flow. It's no different than delivering a speech. You can read one off of a paper, or you can speak from the heart. Which often comes out sounding more coherent is when you're just speaking, you know what you want to say, you have intent, you've thought about some of the words, and then you just deliver the message as best you can without memorizing every single line. So that's what we want to do. In the head stage, again, we're visualizing our instrument. We're looking for patterns. We're analyzing through as much music theory as we have right now. If you don't have much, obviously that's okay. You do what you can. You'll find if you come back and revisit a song later on in your guitar playing career that you're going to see it in a new way, and it's going to start to make even more sense. So we're always growing and aim to always grow. In the center here, you're going to see a blue pyramid inside. These are the things that I believe is also a priority as a guitar player. And I'm going to begin in the bottom right again, and I'm going to move to the top, then I'm going to move to the left, just like I would in the bigger portion of the musicianship pyramid. So in the bottom right corner here, that says picking hand. So you might be left-handed, you might be right-handed. This is the hand that you're using to pick your instrument. I recommend memorizing, understanding this first. Why? Well, how many different directions can my pick go? 2. How many different strings do most guitars have? 6. How many possible combinations is that? Well, ultimately, kind of 12, right? So I can pick up and down on each of the 6 strings. So if I can figure that out from the gate, understanding how the picking pattern works, it's going to save me a ton of time down the road. If you've never thought about your picking, I guarantee it's causing you problems. You might not notice it, but maybe your pick isn't crossing strings when your left hand does, or maybe sometimes it just catches on an extra string. If you're not thinking about consistently picking in the same directions, you're going to be running into some problems. Then we move on to our fretting hand. Whichever hand you use to hold down the strings to the fretboard, that's the one that we want to visualize next. I think most players would begin by looking at the left hand and trying to play the song. However, that's going to yield a lot of mistakes. Our job when we're trying to learn something quickly and efficiently is to cut down on as many mistakes as possible. So we want to make this process as easy and as simple from the beginning, and then gradually add in complexity once we have a handle on this. So then we're going to move into the fretting hand, and we're going to pay attention just to the orders of notes that we're playing, maybe the fingers. If you understand which fingers you should be using, if you're still just using one finger, not a big deal. Maybe you're just counting the numbers, looking for patterns. Where does the left hand go? Is there a pattern? 5, 5, 8, 5, 5, 8, 5, 5, 8. Hey, that's a pattern. So I'm going to visualize that. I'm going to look at that separately from the picking hand. And then obviously we want to be able to put them together. What may not be as obvious is just because we studied what the right hand is doing and then we studied what the left hand is doing, they aren't always going to work together because you can kind of only put your attention in one limb at a time. So understand, sometimes we need to pay extra close attention to some things as the hands synchronize together. And a great place to start is when you have string changes. So you have a note on the E string followed by a note on the B string. Well, maybe I want to put extra attention into making sure that I feel both hands cross there. I kind of want to highlight that mentally as I start to understand this piece. Now, we're kind of getting into the feel of things now, but ultimately we're still thinking about understanding. We're looking for patterns, and we're just trying to get a general sense of how this song works. At this stage, we are trying to memorize music. So your goal here is to get off of the screen or the paper or your chart as quickly as possible, meaning we're not looking down at our hands and then double checking our sheet music or the computer screen, that we got it memorized so that we can start to put the attention and look at our hands, look at our instrument, put our attention on actually intentionally playing this machine rather than constantly double checking our work. Okay, it is going to be a good idea to double check your work because any mistake you make is going to cost you a large amount of time in terms of undoing that habit in your brain and how your brain connects that mistake to your hands. So anytime you can reduce mistakes, certainly do that. If you need to double check a few notes, keep doing that. But remember, the intention is to get off of the page, get the eyes off of the page or screen and into the hands that we're focusing on, and be able to visualize what happens there. If all goes well, we got this green arrow, this green light that says, hey, now go to the hands. And now I'm going to start to do that, and I'm going to gradually really dial into my body. What that might look like is closing your eyes. Now what we're trying to do here is not like make it hard for the sake of being hard. The reason we're going to shut our eyes is trying to get out of that visual mode and really get a sense of how does this piece feel? How does this song feel? How does this riff feel? Does it have a flow to it? You're going to find that when both of your hands are working together in synchronization and your body really learns the song, that it just feels cool, that it just feels right. And that's what we're aiming to do at the top of the triangle here when we get to this hands portion. This is your technical facility. This is your synchronization of the two hands, making sure that everything that I'm doing feels loose, it feels good, and then we do it consistently over and over and over again. We want to make sure that we're using the same pick strokes. We want to make sure that we're using the same fretting fingers each time. If you're using different fingers to play the same song, you are training your brain a number of different ways to play this song. And then when you go to do it, your brain's going to be confused as to which way you want it to go. If all goes well with the hands, then we start to pay attention to what it sounds like. If things aren't going well, if we're finding that we can't remember a certain number of notes, don't just keep grinding it away. Go back, look at the music, close your eyes, see if you can visualize it, see if you can recite the numbers before you go to play them. If you can't play them up here, you will not be able to play them here. Okay? So if all goes well in the hands, now we start to think about how it sounds. Up until this point, we are not concerned about speed, rhythm, really much of anything. Here, once we have the notes memorized, that we understand where they are in the fretboard, because again, the more we know about music theory, the less this is a guessing game. If I understand scales, That tells me why I'm playing a fret 5, why I'm playing a fret 8, and why I'm not playing 6s and 4s. So as I move into the hearing stage, now I want to make sure that I know what the song sounds like in my inner ear. Up until this point, it is always helpful to check with your ear to make sure things that are sounding good and that we're not practicing mistakes, of course. However, what I have noticed in working with thousands of beginners over the years is that beginners tend to hit the play button on the song in their head and then they try to keep up. And they've done none of the things in this triangle other than just kind of looked at the paper or looked at on an online tab for 5 or 6 minutes. And you have to earn that, right? You have to earn that through a lot of work. And I often tell people that, there's so many similarities between baking and being a musician, being a chef and being a musician. So think of it this way. Think about the amount of time it takes to bake a cake versus the amount of time it takes to eat a cake. I don't know about you, but I can eat it way faster than I can to prepare it and stick it in the oven, bake it, and wait. When you're practicing, it's the same deal. Your instrument is the same deal. It's the same proportions. You will take so much longer in the practice room working on the right and upper portion of this triangle than you will listening and enjoying. I'm sorry to say that's just the deal. That's what you signed up for. So think about it this way. You got to take the time to bake the cake, make sure it's extra delicious, and then you get to eat it. So think about being deliberate in the practice room. Think about, what am I seeing? Can I see the note before I play it? Can I hear the note before I play it? Do I know what it's supposed to sound like? Do I know what it's going to feel like? And if you do, then you get to enjoy the cake. Our goal is to be able to play effortlessly and make things sound the way that they want. Ideally here, I'm going to begin with the head, the outer triangle, and I'm going to work with the inner triangle. So while I'm visualizing and memorizing and using some theory, I'm going to see if I can make sense first out of the picking hand, and then the fretting hand, and then both together. And then I move on to hands, and then I'm going to focus on just making sure I can feel the pick. I'm going to train my body to memorize how the pick feels, so that when the time comes to add in the left hand, I don't have to stop and think about my pick. It already knows what I want it to do. If you don't train your picking hand to do what you want it to do, it's going to do random things and it will cause mistakes. And then, of course, I'm going to focus on the left hand, and I'm going to focus on the feeling of putting them together. How does it feel? Am I doing an upstroke as I cross strings? Which finger am I using? Paying attention to all of these things. And then with the hearing, do I know what this line is supposed to sound like? Do I know what this chord progression or the strum pattern, do I know what it's supposed to sound like? And can I accurately reproduce that? Really excellent way to test your inner sense of audiation is to listen and try to sing the song back. If you can sing it, you have an excellent chance of being able to play it. If you can't sing it back or hum it back or imagine it back clearly, you're not going to be able to play it back clearly either. And then the last piece of the hearing section is being expressive. And again, I'm going to have to go back to that right blue corner of our technique triangle. Expression in the right hand means, is the volume appropriate? Am I playing too staccato? Is it legato? What is my picking hand doing to contribute to the overall musicality of what I'm doing? Similarly, what is my left hand doing to contribute to the overall musicality? Am I adding in vibratos? Am I adding in pull-offs? And last, how are they functioning together? Right? Are they working together? Is everything feeling good? Can you feel the timing? Can you feel the pulse? Can you feel the rhythm and the tempo in both of your hands as you're executing through the song? What you're going to find is that you are significantly better at one of these areas than another. It just tends to be how musicians work. Some of us are way theory oriented and we love reading books and gathering information, and those folks are going to know a lot. They're going to be head people. And we have some other folks that are sporty, athletic types that are just really into the grinding away and the physical reps and paying attention to their body, and they tend to be technical players, and they come in at the top end of the pyramid. And then we have some people that just have a naturally gifted ear, and then they can replicate what they hear, and they tend to focus on this corner of the triangle. There isn't one that's better than another because you need all three. Anytime you learn a new song or a specific technique or a chord progression or a scale, you have to go through the entire triangle here. It's not just, oh, hey, well, I have an excellent ear and I can pull that off. I can execute pretty well. Now I'm done. No, I mean, you need the technical facility to actually be able to play the things that you hear. If you can hear it well and you can sing it, awesome. That doesn't mean that it's going to come out well, smooth, and musically in your hands. Similarly, knowing your way around the fretboard, understanding what you're hearing, allows you to put labels on things and say, okay, what I'm hearing there is the dominant chord or whatever. Having the music theory allows me to do the hearing things even faster. One thing that I can tell you is that the hearing portion is difficult. I know that it was for me. If you're not one of those people with a gifted ear, it's going to take time. If you're not one of those people that has a musical mind and you're great with numbers, but you don't understand how F sharps and C's work, that's fine. A little bit of practice in any of these areas, you can do it. I know, because not only have I gotten hundreds and hundreds of students to do it, I've done it myself. And I continue to develop my ear myself and my hands and my knowledge, and understanding how they work together will make you a much better player. So how does all of this translate to the practice room? Keep in mind where you are. I recommend beginning at the bottom right corner, and once you've got a small chunk of music memorized, small chunk of music could be 5 notes, could be 16 notes. It would be effectively whatever you could memorize in 3 to 5 minutes. And then try taking that up to the hands portion. Okay, now that I don't have to stare at my paper and double check chord charts, can I get my hands to do what I want them to do? And then we just practice being very deliberate, first in the right hand, and then in the left hand. If it's with chords, really practice. Where's the movement coming from when I strum? Do I want to strum from here? Do I want to strum from here? How many strings do I need to hit? What direction do I want to strum this on, right? So we're just going to dial into that first because it's easier. And then the left hand, we gradually bring that in, pay attention to how we're feeling, being very deliberate, paying attention to finger relationships, all these sorts of things. Use your body. Your body is what plays the guitar, right? Your inner ear drives choices, hopefully, and it ultimately can edit choices. But what's making the sound is your body. Your ear is going to jump in after the fact and say that's wrong. Well, then it's too late, isn't it? So we want to make sure that we can feel it real solid in our hands. If you've ever played a song and just said, oh, hey, that just felt wrong, you're on the right track. And that's where we want to be. Once we can get it there, then you're free to start making the music that you want, because you're no longer limited by your knowledge and you're no longer limited by your technique. And every single person can get there. And I bet you could get there today if you just worked with a smaller piece. So if you're inclined to say, hey, I'm going to memorize the whole intro to my song, what if you just took the first 4, 5, 6 notes and took those first 4, 5, or 6 notes through this little triangle? I think what you're going to find is that you're probably more capable of sounding the way you want faster than maybe you thought. All right, so take your time. There's no rush. The biggest mistake you can make is biting off too big a piece and not being able to finish, right? Take small bites. If you need more, go back for more, but take small bites and work it through the triangle, and then take the next small bite and work it through the triangle. Our goal is to take what we know, have an idea in my head, whether it's someone else's song or my own, send it to my hands, have total control over my hands so that I can play anything that I want that I heard up here, and then make sure that the sound coming out of my guitar or my amplifier is exactly what I intended, and knowing how to adjust when it isn't. That's the deal. If you have more questions about this, certainly ask, send me an email. I'd love to talk to you more and see what we can do to get you optimizing and using this triangle.